Hello, welcome to Path to Staff. Today we're going to talk about knowledge and the organization of said knowledge. In other words, taking notes. Notes are kind of a scary prospect for some of us who didn't do so well in school, myself included, but the reality is that recording things that we hear and learn to refer to later is an essential part of long-term learning. It's also not easy, which is a bit discouraging at times. As someone who's also struggled in the past with taking effective notes and using them effectively, I hope that I can help provide some helpful tips and tools from what I've learned for you to improve your note-taking skills as well. First, I think it's always a good step to establish why we would want to do a thing or introduce a new step into our normal processes. In other words, what problem does note-taking solve? Simply put, nobody knows everything, nobody remembers everything, nor is it a good idea to have one person know everything and not record it. So when we're talking to other people and hearing new information, or useful reconstructions of old information, it's nice to have it to reference later so we're not placing full burden on our memory, which fails from time to time as a sad fact of life. Another nice benefit of taking notes is that it's very easy to share knowledge. Just send them a file or a link or a picture of your notepad. Being prepared like this is a great way to build up your reputation as someone who knows things, and it's just nice to be able to help people effectively. On a similar note, if you're collecting notes for writing a document or proposal, having a bunch of well-organized notes is great for referencing and integrating into these. Okay, so actually recording things. You may be tempted to go out and buy a notebook just to write down everything you hear now. And while that's perfectly fine, my experience in using pen and paper has kind of led to a few frustrations. Number one, it's very slow. I can't write very fast. When you write for a long time, it just gets it cramps your wrist and it's not very great. Number two, it's hard to reference. Especially as you start collecting more and more notebooks. Were my notes for this book in the red number 3 or the blue number 3? And so on. Number 3, it's easy to destroy. If your notebooks get rained on, or coffee spilled on them, or they get tossed into an incinerator, or you lose them, then they're kind of just gone. Unless you go through the effort of digitizing them, which is kind of its own pain and friction into the process. So I'd also like to make a quick note of a fairly popular notebook called the Rocketbook, which I have, as you can see, I've bought one and I've tried it before. Ultimately, I didn't end up using it that much. I think it was just my writing technique is just not very suitable for the Rocketbook. I ended up with smears on my hand and smears on the page and stuff. That said, probably just my writing technique. If you think it's an interesting idea, it's definitely a really nice process for digitizing your notes. Would recommend if you think it's interesting. I'll have a link down below. After the Rocketbook experiment, personally I became a fan of typing notes. So there's a few different systems for it, such as Notion, OneNote, Evernote, and Obsidian, just to name a few. So it's kind of up to you. Try them all out. See what they look like. Personally, I use Obsidian because I think it looks nice. It's a marked editor by default, and it has a lot of nice features that includes like built-in mermaid diagrams, a quick preview so you can see your diagrams and what it looks like actually rendered to HTML. It also has a nifty system for linking notes together. If you link to a note from a different note, then it will kind of put them together in like a graph sort of view. I don't use it as much, but it's a pretty cool feature. I'll have links to all of those down below as well. Regardless of the system you use, be it pen and paper, digitized notebooks such as the Rocketbook, or typing notes, the next important part is kind of when do you take notes. This is more subjective and ultimately it's kind of up to you, but there's sort of a few things that I think it depends on. Things such as the familiarity with the topic, ease of accessing the information in the future, how much time you have to take these notes, and so on. For example, if you found a really good website that has a lot of nice information, sometimes a bookmark is just as good, or putting a link to it in some other note. Or if you're in a meeting and taking notes, you may want to keep them brief and ignore super proper grammar. That way you can kind of get the important parts, and then later you can revise and sort of restructure them for sharing and for better reference later. And the last part is the actual how, or the method by which you put things onto the paper or the file, as it may be. For classroom notes, there's a few different kinds of systems. I won't go into those too much here. Just some names, I guess, to throw out. There's like the sentence method, there's the flow method, there's the Cornell method, I think is one of the more popular ones. If you're a student and want to know more about that for that or for your own satisfaction, I'll leave a link down below to a page that I found with some good explanations of some of these methods. It's from UT Chattanooga. I didn't go to University of Tennessee, but it just kind of seemed like the best link on the first page. So as for what I do, whenever I'm typing notes, my method is kind of different based on the kind of notes that I'm taking. For example, if I'm taking notes out of a book, then I'll usually read a couple of pages, close the book, or put it out of sight or something, and then try and remember the things that I read on those pages, and then write them down in my own words. And then I pick the book back up, repeat with the next couple pages, and just do that through the whole book. This is an example of active recall, which is one of the more effective proven methods of learning and retaining information long term. Won't go too much into it. It's more of a productivity thing, but I'll also put a link to that down below. Something else I write a lot is research notes for projects that I'm doing. Sometimes these will turn into proposals or decision records, so I typically follow a basic layout that easily turns into those kinds of documents. It typically starts with an explanation of what we're trying to solve and why, along with an easy-to-read set of requirements and constraints in the form of a bullet list. And from there, it kind of grows to include the current state of things, why we need to improve this thing, the research solutions with some form of cost-benefit analysis. Typically, I keep this simple for the notes and then I expand on it later whenever I turn it into a real document. Subtasks and dependencies, impact on other teams, milestones, timelines, kind of anything that's important for these proposals or decision record kind of documents. I will note that might be overkill, but I kind of like doing it as an exercise anyway, so that I have my thoughts more organized and better for communicating later and sharing later. The last major type of notes that I often take is meeting notes. Just a note, I only take these whenever I'm not the driver of the meeting. If you are the driver of the meeting, it's probably better to just make the meeting go smoothly and go effectively. But whenever you're not, then it's kind of nice to have a volunteer for taking the meeting notes. There's a lot of good templates for what these should look like when they're shared. If you look for like meeting minute templates, I'll link some of those down below. Lots of links down below today. What I like to do is I'll just kind of write a very basic transcript. Just get the important parts, ignore grammar, unnecessary grammar rather. Once the meeting's done, then after you can take the the raw transcript and just kind of put that into a meeting minutes template. It's a lot easier to get things like the action items, the agendas, any decisions that have been made. It's a lot easier to get those from the raw notes than it is to kind of process them into things on the while you're hearing it, and also while other people are talking. So I like to separate the transcription part and the kind of the processing and the parsing. So that's kind of it. Today we talked about why notes are useful, ways to take notes. And then, I went over a couple of methods that I personally use for when I'm taking notes. Of course, these are all just, this is a very, subjective kind of thing. I know plenty of people who just take pen and paper notes. I don't really know anyone who uses the Rocketbook for like work notes, but I imagine people do that. Most people I know take notes by typing. But it's kind of up to you. And of course, like the way that you do it, the methods that you use for taking notes. The program that you use for taking notes, again, I use Obsidian, but I know Notion is also pretty popular. Evernote, OneNote, all of those are perfectly valid choices depending on what you want to do. Yeah, hopefully this has been helpful for things that you can consider kind of incorporating into your own workflow. If you have any successful note-taking strategies that you would like to share, share them down in the comments down below. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.